And right now, you can find us talking to the one and only Sam McKewon of the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, what's up?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good. How are you, Sam? You hanging in there?
Yeah, we are. Yep, it's CWS week, so
Are you pretty happy
the
about that?
first week of the CWS is always fun.
Well, so, are you a traditionalist? Do you romanticize? Do you have a team? Like, what's the backstory?
Well, I think it's always great. No,
The
I
setup,
really haven't.
the setup threw me for a loop. I thought something profound was coming because there was the pause and then the whelp, and I was like, "Well,
No,
all right, here we
no,
go. Here we go."
no, I don't have a team. I hope. I think what we always hope in Omaha is that the fan bases show out, and the hope this week is that Kentucky really shows up. I mean, that's the school that's never been here. They have an incredible fan base for basketball, and hopefully, as they call it, Big Blue Nation shows up here in Omaha, and they have a great time and they have a good run. I mean, I think that's probably a team that most people can get behind. I think people will get behind North Carolina State because of what happened to them here 3 years ago.
I don't know. Did you catch their act in Athens?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah, they're an interesting team for sure. So I think North Carolina State is a team that people will be interested in. It's a lot of favorites. It's a lot of named teams. I think Florida State's actually a good story. I don't know that people really care that much for Florida State in general. I think their coach is likable, and I think if they can win the first game against Tennessee, they may run this thing all the way. They may run the whole table, and
Wow.
it's important. The first game is important, obviously winning that first one, but Florida State's kind of on a roll, and they got bats, so they can hit it. They can hit the ball, and in this park, if the weather cooperates, we're going to see a lot of home runs. So Florida State's got a
It's
chance
going to
to
be
win.
hot. Will the ball
That
travel?
usually means home runs.
Yeah.
Usually.
Sam, do you think people? I mean, you mentioned that maybe people aren't necessarily going to be invested in the Florida State story, but do you think as people get
Coming from a Florida State honk, here we go.
I think there is something interesting there. If they were to go on this run that you're talking about and win national championship, that they would do it under Link Jarrett as opposed to Mike Martin, who was there for 100 million years and kind of defined
and survived his son with a couple shaky years.
Yeah, and defined Florida State baseball for basically everybody that's seen him in Omaha. Like that, that's pretty compelling story. Even if you don't care about the school itself.
Yeah, and he passed away in February.
Yep.
So it's a good story. And Link Jarrett played for Mike Martin. I think he was a teammate of Mike Martin Jr.'s actually in college. So Jarrett's been here as a player. He's been here as a coach at Notre Dame. He's now as coach at Florida State. They kind of got a likable team. They've got some guys from JUCOs, and it's not your classic Tiffany Beatty through Florida State program. They're kind of gritty. I think Kentucky will probably get some of the love this week, though. They've never been here. They're really good. Their fans will stand out because they're not some shade of maroon or red, so you'll know them when you see them. So I think Kentucky will get a lot of attention this week. You just don't know how well they're going to play. Once you get here, it's a whole different atmosphere and a very, very big state. They need their fans to show up and help them.
So, Sam, let me transition here real quick because I was talking about embedding bites yesterday, and you'd be a good person to ask about this. So there were 15 offers that came out of camping in the last handful of weeks in the Metroplex and Lincoln's camps, which are still going. And June has become such an important month. I joke about kind of Bo's philosophy about June and signing periods, and this is actually going to come to fruition 10 years later. When do you think, or how recently do you remember having the discussions that when's the Saturday start time for games? We have to be able to get recruits in. We need them on campus for a game
Right.
experience. Once you get them here, they say yes. Like, when do you feel we transitioned away from that?
Probably in the social media era. And so, probably in the last 12 years, the end of the Bo era, I think you probably started to see that. A lot of these high school kids don't want to wait until their high school senior year. They want to make decisions before that. I think they feel a lot of pressure to make those decisions. And they also see what's going on social media, and they want to join that brigade. And so, yeah, I mean, I think we have only begun, just so we're clear, we've only begun to understand the impact that social media, specifically Twitter, has had on sports and sports journalism. We've only begun to understand that. But it's really had an effect on recruiting, for sure. And Instagram is now becoming that too. 18 years ago, there was no such thing as an edit on Instagram or Twitter, and so these athletes really want to have an edit or whatever they want to have. And so, I think that's when it started to change. You're not going to wait till your senior year. You want to do it in the summer. You want to have somewhere to go in the summer. And so, the value of getting that stuff done in the summer is really important. And so I think that's probably when you started to hear the conversations about need to get spring and summer visits out there going. I think we've had spring or summer visits for about 7 or 8 years. I'm an advocate of having a summer period and a February period. No December. Get rid of December entirely. Get rid of it. Summer and February. Your summer period will be for the players that you absolutely know that you want to be a part of your program. And they'll know real fast how.
Sam, you still with us? I don't know, Shane. We might have lost him just a little. He might be in a tough spot.
I'll try and track him down.
Oh, there he is.
But they do, and so we'll see what happens.
Sam, let me ask you something. Do you think this staff is with the kind of they're obviously going to have their camps. They've had a ton of success with each camp that they offer. If you just look at the names of the individual camps, whether it's post-grad class or youth clinic or whatever, 9 through 12. They have offers that come out of fullback camps. They have offers that come out of all these different camps. At what point do you think we move on past stars or rankings or who else is offering and start to trust their evaluation? Is that 2-3 years away? Are we looking at this year for case studies? Like, when do you think they obviously trust their system? When do you think we will?
I mean, I do now. Like, I've never.
It kind of seems that way, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah. I trust it now. I've said this before, but I'll just say it again. The way I categorize players is, I think that if you're just looking at recruiting services try really, really, really hard to make their top 100 a legit top 100. They spend a lot of time talking about who the 5 stars are going to be and not going to be. And so if a kid is a 5-star, he's a 5-star. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't just say, well, let's just give this kid a 5-star because screw it. They don't do that because they like to crow about how many 5-stars got drafted 4 years later.
Mm-hmm.
So the top 100 matters. If a kid's a top 100 kid, he's probably a good football player because the recruiting services have spent a lot of time cultivating that list, and every other school is in on those top 100 kids. Then you have a list that's somewhere around the top 500 or 600, something like 101 to 600, and that's kind of a group. And then you've got a list that's just kind of after that. And the reality is, you want to get as many of the top 100 kids as you can. And I think Matt Rule would too. Like, if 4 or 5 stars came into camp and they said, listen, we don't like to come to Nebraska, I think Matt Rule would be like, well, okay, that sounds good to me. And he'd have to really disagree with the measurables or whatever to say, no, I don't really want you. I just don't think that would happen. But after that, each coach has a kind of, hey, this is what I like. This is what I want in my program. This is the kind of player I'm looking for. That guy's perfect for Rover or whatever. And that's where you got to trust the evaluations. And most 4-stars, like a 4-star and a 3-star, is roughly the same player. It's about development and fit and probably intangibles. So I think I've been on that for a while. Like I used to say, if Iowa State and Paul Rhodes offers a defensive back and Nebraska offers that defensive back, they've probably offered a good defensive back because Paul Rhodes knew what he was doing, you know? And so like, I would always look at the teams that offered probably more than the star rank. Because if Nebraska Matt Rule offers a kid, he's probably a pretty good football player. He might be a little raw, but he's probably pretty good. And so that's what I look at. It's like who offers, who's the coach that offered, what are they doing, why are they offering, you know, that kind of thing versus the star ratings. The star ratings, I'll be honest with you, Damon, I think the star ratings have always kind of favored Nebraska in some ways. They've signed some 4-stars over the years that I'm like, that guy's not a 4-star player.
Yeah, and I'm, you know, like you got to take this with a grain of salt because you've known me so long, but I am pretty confident in terms of evaluating high school guys. I've never agreed with the star rankings because the 5s are easy. Mm-hmm. Anything after that, it's like it's subjective, it's camping, it's a crapshoot. I don't believe it one bit. I just think it's nonsense.
I do too. Like, well, I don't want to. I think there's something to be said for a guy that, I think there's something to be said for, hey, we're going to give this guy a rating. I don't think they do that necessarily lightly. And so if there's a guy that's like not rated, and then all of a sudden, hey, we're going to put a 3-star rating on this guy, that's probably indicative of high FCS, FBS caliber player. So I trust that, but the things between, well, he's a high 3 or he's a low 4, and according to this or according to that, I just don't put as much stock into that. And that's no knock on the recruiting services. But that's how I lump it. Top 100, top 600, top 1,000. Mm-hmm. And then if there's guys after that, you're really taking flyers. You are. Like, if the guy's not ranked in the top 1,000, then that's a guy, that's my guy, as, Herm Edwards used to say. Like, that's a guy that you think, you see something in that guy that other people don't see. And Nebraska signed a few of those under Matt Rule. They have. And we'll just see how it turns out.
We're talking with Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, with that kind of in mind, what you just kind of described as how you view recruiting and how you think the staff sort of approaches it, what does that say to you about all of the in-state recruiting that Nebraska's done? Does that tell you that the talent in the state is way better than a lot of people give it credit for? Or is there another factor at play there that makes them so adamant about recruiting the state well?
Yeah, I think the talent was better, 10 years ago than it was given credit for. And the reason we know that is because North Dakota State and South Dakota State have won a lot of football games with kids that didn't play at Nebraska. And so I think the talent was better back then than it is now, than people gave it credit for.
Yeah. How many years has Harrison Phillips been in the league?
Right. Well, and he went to and he was a D1.
Right. I think
I'm talking Easton Stick. I mean, Easton Stick should not. No.
Listen, you ain't got to tell me. I'm still mad about that.
Yeah, that was a silly. Well, we can't take Easton Stick, but let's take this kid from Atlanta, AJ Bush, who isn't as good, and I mean that was Sinback and whatever. So, that stuff has happened before. I think they're Nebraska is certainly helping to offer some of these kids. What's fascinating with what's happened in Colorado. I mean, who would believe?
Unbelievable.
That Nebraska has more D1 prospects than Colorado, but they do because Colorado and Colorado State won't offer the kids.
Yeah.
And so they don't want them. They just don't really want them. And so some of it is driven by the in-state school. But at the same time, Iowa has, come in here. Iowa State now has Ben Bramer, so they'll probably get another kid along the way.
Yeah, that guy will be playing on Sundays.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean,
so yeah, oh yeah, that was so. If you want to say that Rules had a miss so far, that'd be the one. And granted, Bramer was committed to Frost.
Yep.
And not really.
Nebraska. I don't put that one on, and I know there's going to be the proverbial eye roll that because I come across as a Rule defender. I know they tried. Like for them to even get him in Lincoln the weekend after they got there with the top recruits in the state, I thought was a miracle. Like, I mean, he had 35 really, really good guys in that pavilion. 10 days of him being in Lincoln, and Bramer was there, and I was shocked. So, I mean, that was a Rude guy, that was a Frost guy, and I get it. I'm not gonna, lament over what once was, but said from day one, that is a Sunday guy. But that one was more about relationships than it was the actual school. And I'm just hoping Nebraska moves past that, right? Like make it about the school again. But with that, they got to win because I think that's what Coach Rule wants. Make it about the school.
Right.
That's how you keep guys there, right? Because he's trying to already build the family component. He's given them everything they want, from diversity to food choices to eyeballs on them to treating them like adult. Like it's a good situation from that. If they win, he becomes flat out, I mean, dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And I think they've also tried hard to, with the youth camp in Omaha and also just developing relationships with high school coaches. They're trying hard to develop players, when they're 12, or 9, to get the kids to love Nebraska. I went to my first camp when I was this age. And, even though, and I kind of grew up liking Nebraska because they treated me well when I was a little kid. I think other coaches had gotten away from that. Now, I don't blame them per se, but people had gotten away from that a little bit. Like it just, I think, and I don't mean this in in a weird way, but I think Nebraska had gotten very caught up in not good process. They had gotten and this is social media talking. They'd gotten very caught up in their brand and like where they were nationally and competing against X, Y, and Z school. And maybe they lost the plot a little bit as it related to, what's the right word? Like good process. And Rule's a process guy. Like he's a good brand builder. He's natural at it. And so I think he's worked very hard on making a really good process. And that process has been good for Nebraska.
We're talking with Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, I want to return to the player retention thing here for just a second because, DB brought up the obviously the improvements and all the options that they've got at the school now with the facilities and the resources. They're trying to build that family culture. And then you've got the wins as well. Out of those three things, I know they're all important and different things are more important to different people, but in your mind, how much do the wins weigh? Like if they go 6 wins this year versus 8 wins, how much does that matter in not only player retention, but also future recruiting?
I think 6 wins is probably enough this year, but 8 would be a lot better. What I'll say is that for everything that Rule and his staff put into it, because I think they put a lot in and they asked a lot from the players. If you're going to put this much in and you're going to ask this much of the players, I think you got to win. Like it's too much hard work to go 4-8, 5-7. So it's important that they win. There's coaches, and I'm not trying to knock Riley here because I'm a big fan of Mike Riley. There's a lot of things about him I like, but I think under Mike Riley, you could. It wasn't quite roll the ball out there, but it was like, hey, enjoy your summer. It was not as intense. And, you kind of got out of it what you put into it. And I think everybody could kind of look around and say, well, there's some guys not putting very much in and they're still on the team. And we might go 5-7 because we don't, but that's not the truth. That's not the case with Rule. It's a 365 kind of thing. And so, like, I think it's going to produce wins, that process and culture. At the same time, it needs to, because otherwise it's a lot of investment for, for 5 and 7. And I think, they were all, and Damon remembers this, by the end of last season, you kind of looked at those guys in the last, after the Wisconsin game and after the Iowa game, and they were tapped out. They had given everything they could. And I think, Rule had given everything. And so, like, that feeling, that needs to be rewarded with bowl games. And I think it will be. So I think the winning does matter because of how much they put into it. If they put less into it, then you can almost say, well, hey, we're having a good time here. But I think Rule wants to have a good time, but he also wants to put a lot of work in. So winning matters, and I think as time goes on, that weighs more and more heavily on player retention, because to go to Nebraska is to be part of a pretty intense culture. I mean, they asked a lot of you.
Sam, real quick, I got a couple minutes here. A bowl game, 7-8 year drought. That's 15 practices, and it's 120, which is, I don't know, 8 springs. Important or not as important as we make it with such a mobile and transient player process with guys that participate in bowl games?
I think it would. I think it becomes less important when you've been to 15 in a row. I think it's very important right now.
Yeah,
I think that's
completely
the next
agree.
I think you got to try to get that thing done. And again, I'm not saying anything that Matt Rule doesn't already know. He knows all those things, and I think that's part of why.
Yeah, they're not in position to have opt-outs, and they have a lot of young guys. They need all the practices they can get, and I think it would serve them well. You just can't forfeit spring after spring, which in essence is what not going to bowl games is doing.
That's right, and I can envision Ty Robinson, for example. Let's say they go 8-4, and they go to a bowl game. I don't think Ty's going to say, "Well, I'm going to opt out of that." I've spent 6 years here trying to get to this thing. But now that I'm here, I'm going to opt out to prepare for the NFL. I don't see that. I think they're going to have full investment. And now, again, you get 10 years down the road, and you've been to 8 or 9 bowl games in that time, and a guy's already been to 3. I could see it happening. It wouldn't be that big of a deal. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why they've tried to fix the quarterback position so completely is because they know that if they had that position right last year, they had already been to a bowl game. So they've tried really hard to fix that position in the offseason. That's the one spot that they had to get better at more than any other. And I think they've done a pretty good job of trying to improve it. And they're still trying to improve it as we speak.
That's Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, we appreciate your time as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Take care.